All right, so under this section that says postage stamps on your notes, there's a bolded word that says piecewise function. Near that word, I want you to write in this definition, and then we'll break it down. So, or just write it somewhere. Piecewise function is a function defined using different expression for different intervals in its domain. Piecewise function is a function defined using different expressions for different intervals in its domain. Okay, so expressions can be numbers. It can be numbers and variables. It could even just be variables. However, I don't think for piecewise functions they would ever just have variables. So I'm going to erase this one, even though an expression can technically be a variable only. It could be more than one term. But for the most part, the piecewise function type problems are really simple for when they say different expressions. It's usually just different numbers. So they use different expressions for different intervals. Intervals would be like, kind of like how we did on average rate of change, like noon to 4 p.m., 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., 10 to midnight. Like those are all intervals. So for different intervals in its domain, what does domain refer to? So different x's, or actually I'm just going to put x's. This domain has all the x's. We also call the x's the inputs or the independent variable. They all are referring to the same thing. So when we talk about piecewise functions, we're saying for different intervals in the domain, they have different expressions for the outputs. Probably makes more sense when we have different rules for different parts of its domain. And make sure we pay attention. Really not playing with our computer. All right, so going to well, I mean, it's just a little bit above. But going to the warm-up, this example. A self-serve frozen yogurt store sells servings up to 12 ounces. It charges 50 cents per ounce for a serving between 0 and 8 ounces, and $4 for any serving greater than 8 ounces and up to 12 ounces. So like domain and range. Domain is all the what? X's. Look at what our x-axis is labeled. Ounces of yogurt. So for different intervals in the domain, so they sell up to 12 ounces. From 0 to 8 ounces, it's a certain price. What's the price from 0 to 8 ounces? Nope, it's not $4. Again, 50 cents per ounce. So here's an example of an interval in the domain. That range for that part of the domain is that it costs 50 cents per ounce. So we'll do 15 cents times x because that's the ounces in ohms. So for 0 to 8 ounces, it costs 50 cents per ounce. Then it says for any serving greater than 8 ounces and up to 12 ounces. So we'll put above 8 ounces. And then we'll put to 12 ounces. How much does it cost? $4. So these are examples of different intervals in the domain. These are examples of different expressions. One actually looks more like an expression, the other one's just a number, still different expressions. So they have different prices for different parts of the domain. Which of these graphs would best represent the situation? Don't say it out loud, just think about it. Which graph looks like they charge 50 cents an ounce for the first 8 ounces and $4 for 8 to 12 ounces? Just think about it. All right, raise your hand if you think it's A that best represents the situation. Raise your hand if you think it's B. Raise your hand if you think it's C. Raise your hand if you think it's P. Okay, so of those that did vote, we did it right. It's 2 different price points for different parts of the domain. So look, from 0 to 8, it's the 50 cents per ounce. So like if I get 2 ounces, it's $1. 4 ounces, it's $2, right? So that's why it looks linear like that. It's a linear expression. And then from 8 to 12, where it is on the X, it's just one solid price. Okay, so yes, it has different parts or different expressions for different parts of the domain. Any questions on that? So this is just a can I read? So over here, this is more like what they look like. They tend to look like little like stair steppers, like little dumbbells. So this is an example of a piecewise function for the relationship between a postage rate and the weight of a letter. So it looks like this is what they're having to pay in postage and the weight of the letter in ounces down here. You're going to answer each part of 1 and 2. I don't need you to answer 3. I don't need you to find here. I just need you to be able to remember. So based on this graph, how much does it cost to send a letter with these different weights? If a letter costs 92 cents to mail, how much did the letter weigh? Just answer those for right now. You see the graph. Okay, Natalia, what's the price of a letter that weighs 1 ounce? Good. Now the 1 ounce is a little tricky, so I know I'm going to look here first because this is where the weight is in ounces. If they weren't labeled for whatever reason, I just hope you know that like the x-axis is what's always independent, and the y-axis is what's always dependent. So like how much you have to pay depends on how much it weighs that you're trying to send. But the 1 is tricky because this is what you see. See an open circle and a closed circle. Think about like when you bubble in an answer on a test, you're saying that that's part of the solution. Boy, sit up and look at the screen. So when there's an open and closed circle, the closed circle is the one that tells you what the answer is, not the open. It just looks like this because it looks like above the 0 up to the 1, it's this same price. And then as soon as it's above 1, even just a little bit, it now jumps to this price. Okay, so 50 cents is how much it costs for the 1 ounce letter. Make sense? So then Logan D, how much does it cost to send a letter weighing 1.1 ounces? Say 1.5. So 1.5 for what they're paying, it's way up here. It's like the highest part of my graph. So they're not paying that. need to do is find where 1.1 is on the x, see where it touches the graph, and what y value that is. Between 0.5 and what? Okay, so it looks like they only have 4 different price points. They have 50 cents, about, like, you could estimate this. If you look down here, it tells you it's about 71 cents. But like you could say 73 cents or whatever. It's like where this one goes up to over here, somewhere below the 1. And over here, like in the middle of 1.5. So it's not like this one where maybe you could estimate like what that is approximately. For the one about the postage, it's like this price or it's the next price. So 1.1 on the X is like right here, right? Go up to where 1.1 touches the graph. That Y value is about, however you want to estimate it. I'll go 0.71 because that's what it says down here. But if you said 0.73, 0.74, I wouldn't say 0.75 exactly because it's not touching their exact. Does that make sense? Like it's just reading. It doesn't make sense or no. Okay, then Jenny, how much does it cost to send a letter that weighs 0.9 ounces? $0.92. Okay, so 0.9, would that be before or after the 1? So really, when it touches more like here. Right? You have to find it on the weight and then see where it touches and then look on the Y. How much does it actually cost? So here's where 25 cents is. I don't see anything there. So 50 cents. So in really simple terms, above 0 up to 1 ounce, including 1 ounce, is 50 cents. Above 1 ounce up to 2 ounces, including the 2 ounces, is 71 cents. Above the 2 ounces up to 3 ounces is like 92 cents, whatever you want to say that value is. Under the one. Above 3 ounces up to 3.5 ounces is about 1.30. Okay, so that's what you do when they give the ounces. When they give you how much they're spending, the 92 cents to mail, I'm not going to look over here first. I'm going to look over here. That's where they're spending dollars. 92 cents would have to be this line. How much would the letter have to weigh? Quiet. 2.5 ounces. Could it be that, guys? It could be. Really, as long as you said something above 2 ounces, because if you said 2 ounces exactly, like 2 ounces exactly, it actually there's actually 1 cent. But above 2 ounces up to how much? Where does that line end? So above 2 ounces up to 3 ounces is what you could say it weighed. Okay, so there you go. I didn't have you finding the error in how they wrote the rule down here. But notice like the open and closed circles, those go with certain inequality symbols. So if it's included in the answer set, it should have a little line underneath. Problem with this one is they have lines underneath both inequalities, and that wouldn't work. That would be the function. Remember we said you can't have the same item with two different prices? So look up here. Remember we said you can't have the same item with two different prices at the store? So that's why we have the open and closed circles. So for my inequalities, when they're setting it up, I shouldn't have both of them be closed or both of them be like open. If we're doing based off of this situation, it should be that the right hand side would have the closed circles. So it should be equal to and that's what they say. We're going to look on the back side where they give us the rule and ask us to answer questions. So that's So we have function C represents the dollar cost of renting a bike from a bike sharing service for 30 minutes. Here's the rules describing the function. So this is more like what you saw on your final the first time. Final doesn't change. Same question that I went before. And I'm telling you it looks something like this. So maybe the function notation was confusing to you. So let's break that down. Function notation is just a shorthand way of writing stuff. So like f would be like the name of the function if I wrote it like this. X no matter what is your input. And y no matter what is your output. Now I could replace each of these letters, but no matter what, what's in parentheses is always your input, your independent variable. And what that whole piece is equal to as a unit is your output. So like over here, it looks like T is for what? Reread it if you have to. What are they defining T as in this? So T is for time in minutes, which makes sense. Time is almost always on the x-axis anyway. And C of T as a whole tells me the cost. So this right here, C of T equals, these are all costs to rent. Over here where you see the T's, that's telling you for how many minutes rent. So you guys are going to fill in this table based on the rules. I'm going to ask you, like, probably everyone will talk again. I already talked just a second ago, we'll talk again. I'm going to ask you how much does it cost to rent it for 0 minutes, 10 minutes, 25 minutes, 60 minutes, and so on. We're going to sketch it. You don't really need to describe any rules, but you do need to determine the domain. So answer all those pieces using this rule. So, Gianni, how much does it cost to rent it for 0 minutes? $0. Doesn't that make sense? If I'm not renting it at all, why should I be anything? Sometimes there's like things in the description that say like, oh yeah, it's a $20 flat fee or blah, blah, blah. But if you're not renting it at all, $0. Plus right here where you look at the minutes, it doesn't have the equal to part here. So when it's 0 exactly, it costs $0. Question over there? Yeah, open it. Yes. Yeah, last week we did slope intercept form. So yeah, if there was a flat fee, then we'd incorporate that, but these are just piecewise functions. So even though 0 isn't like on the menu, so to speak, it costs $0. All right. So Kyle, when it's rented for 10 minutes, how much does it cost? $2.50, yes. Because where does the 10 fall between? What interval? Good. Right? It makes the most sense going here. 0 is less than 10 and 10 is less than or equal to 30. So that's why it costs $2.50. That's why I really stress, like, just understand the function notation. What's in the parentheses should be your input. These are inputs. Time and minutes are my inputs. Find where it matches and then just put your answer right there. The number it's attached to. Logan S, how much does it cost to rent it for 25 minutes? What interval does a 25 that's on? So that graph won't help you, but it's then looking on it. We're looking at the tool right there. What interval does 25 fall into? Okay, so how much will it cost if I rent it for 25 minutes? Right, 25 doesn't fall between 30 and 60, does it? Where does 25 fall between? What interval? Between 0 and 30, right? 25 is between 0 and 30. No. So, okay, but do we understand why? Yeah. Where does the 25 fall in? From 0 to 30, right? 25 is between 0 and 30. So it costs how much? Benefit. Put it all together. Let me make sure you guys understand. Where does the 25 fall into? From 0 to 30, right? So what is that attached price? Okay. Miss Talia, how much does it cost for renting it for 60 minutes? What did you say? $5. Now that one's kind of tricky because you see the 60 in two different spots. You need the one that has the equal to with the inequality symbol. And T is equal to 60, it's $5. Lakeland, what about when we rented for 75 minutes? Good, dinner, 130 minutes. 1250. Because again, it falls in this interval, not this one. We're not just going down the list. 130 is between 120 and 150. So that's the price. James, what about 180 minutes? $15. If I were sketching this, so my minutes for my first interval goes from 0 to 30, and that price is $2.50. I would have an open circle for this inequality, but that's an open circle type situation. It's not included in the answer. And a closed circle on this part where the equal to is. And it's the same price in between. We're going to do some of these because we don't have the time. All right, but like here's from 30 to 60, it costs $5. Can you guys stop moving around? So 60 to 90, it costs $7.50. And the way that it's set up, open circle over here, closed circle on the end. And it's this amount exactly, it's this price. And again, there's more, we're just not going to go through. Now, domain and range. Domain is all the what in a function. So my x's, what's my lowest x value I can have? And what's the highest? What about according to this rule? Yeah. So this table, we just pulled random values for you to answer. According to this rule, what's the longest you could rent the bike for? So the domain is 0 to 720 minutes. Can you have a fraction of a minute? Yeah. So you could say all real numbers from, I know I'm pleasing minutes here, 0 to 720 minutes, because it is every value in between. It's nice. But like if we're saying from like 0 to 8 minutes, yeah, it's every decimal in between. All right, now range. Range is all the what in a function? Now they're only charging a few different price points. So for my range, it's gonna be that they're charging $2.50, $5, $7.50. Like you're just listing it out like we did earlier. Because it's just these price points and then it's not every number. That makes sense. Okay. So, and here's the thing on your final. It would say something like C of 180 equals blank. You need to understand the function notation. They want to know when it's 180 minutes, how much does it cost? So I would put $15 because that's how much it costs, right? And we're looking on that. And then when you keep finishing the filling the blanks, it would say that, which means for blank minutes, it costs blank dollars. So attach the minutes to the situation. Like how we said T is time in minutes, well, 180 is just in the parentheses. So if you say for 180 minutes, it costs $50, right? For some reason, that was like the most missed question on the test. And that is called no calculation.
That's the like the most.
The most what? Well, do you guys get it now? No, you're doing it for homework because you guys wasted all your time today.